Welcome to day 5 of our challenge. Today we'll be examining weighted analysis and trying to understand what that term really means. But for us to understand what weighted analysis mean, we need to first of all understand what weights are. So let's head over here and see what that means. Let's start with this imagery here. This is what we call the circle of inference. It means that from the parent population, for example, the overall US population, we draw a small sample through the process of sampling. And from the sample, we then get estimates which we can then infer back to the population. And this circle continues over and over. Now, this leap from the sample to the population via inference assumes, however, that the sample looks like the population. So this is the baby, this is the mama. So this assumes that the sample, the baby looks like the mama. If for whatever reason the sample does not look like the parent, then we have a little problem on our hands. It means that we cannot make this leap from sample to population via inference. And that is why we need weighting, because sometimes you might have, for example, the proportion of females maybe 50% in the population, but you might end up with a percentage of 25%. Well, clearly 25% and 50% are not the same. It implies, therefore, that the sample does not look like the parent. And so weighting is done to ensure that the distribution of the sample on key variables resembles that of a parent, so that we can then make the leap from sample to population via inferences. Now, let's look at it via an analogy. Imagine that this is the sample here and this is the parent. What weighting does is that it takes this sample and forces it to look like the parent. Because remember, the objective here is to give this sample here to somebody who has never seen the parent before, so that they can look at this and say, oh, I see, this is how the parent looks like. So we clearly cannot give them this clay as it is, because it resembles the parent in no shape or form. But by forcing this sample to look like the parent, it's kind of, at least this reduces the contrast between them. It makes this a bit more similar to the parent, so that we can use this meaningfully to describe the population. We call this new object a pseudo-population. So weighting always creates a pseudo-population which we can then use to compare the parent population. Now, it is not only weights that we worry about in weighted analysis. There are two other variables that we need. They are the PSU and the stratum variables. If you liken this to a home theater setup or a stereo setup, the weights control the volume up and down, so they make the estimates go up, which is bigger, or go down, which is smaller. Whereas the PSU and strata variables control like the balance of the speakers left and right. In other words, PSU and strata control the confidence intervals, whether they are narrow or whether they are wide. So the bottom line is the weights control the point estimates, whether they are big or small, whereas the PSU and strata control the confidence intervals, whether they are narrow or wide. All right, now that we understand the fundamentals of what these variables mean, let's go over to the Chisquares platform and let's see how we can apply those variables in our analysis. So let's look at the challenge for today, for the tasks we are supposed to complete today. Task 1 says we should create a new project and import the data sets for this phase of our analysis. So let's head over to the Chisquares platform and let's create a new project. I'll go to data analysis and I'll come to start new project. I'll call this project the challenge weighted analysis, and let's proceed. I'll upload the data set. The file that was shared was a Parquet format, which I have downloaded. The platform allows you to import data from whatever format, whether it's Parquet or CSV or SPSS or Stata, so it doesn't really matter. But this is the file that was shared, the Parquet format. So I'll just double click that and upload and then proceed. So immediately you upload the data set, the platform automatically shows you a pop-up that says set weighted analysis. And the question is, would you like to adjust for complex survey design variables, weight, PSU, or stratum? The answer options are no or yes. In this case, we actually do want to adjust for those variables. So let's click on yes. Now, the options are for us to select the three variables involved: weight, PSU, and stratum. You need to read the documentation for your dataset to know what those variables are. But for our dataset, the weight variable is called WTFA, which is the weight final among adults. That's what these letters mean. The weight for final weight among adults. So we're going to select that. The PSU variable, let's select that as well. PSU. Typically, you'll find that the weight is always called something like weight or WT. The PSU will always be named something along the lines of PSU. And the strata or stratum will be named something along the lines of strat or stratum or strata. It's not a given, but most of the times, those are the names you will find in most of the national data sets. So stratum, we'll search for strat, and we see the variable here. So after loading the variables, we will then click on save. And you can see here that the analysis mode has changed from unweighted to now it is weighted. This means that everything we do at this point onwards will automatically account for the complex survey design. You don't have to do any other thing apart from setting those variables up. The platform will then implement the weighted analysis for every single thing that you do. Now let's go on to the second part of our tasks for today in terms of the deliverables. The second part says compare weighted and unweighted prevalence estimates for all of these outcomes. Let's see what that means. Let's go over to our project and let's select estimate. This time we're coming over to estimate, not data processing. So estimate, we come over to prevalence because we've been asked to compute prevalence estimates. So select prevalence, then select the outcomes. There are 1, 2, 3 different selections here. The outcome are the variables that you want to analyze as the endpoints for your analysis. So it could be things like current cigarette smoking or cigar smoking or whatever your outcomes are. Stratification variables are variables with which you wish to break down the results by. For example, I might want to break down prevalence of smoking by age or by sex or by race. Those will be called my stratification variables. Next, you have a time variable. This is only applicable if you are interested in analyzing trends over time. So if, for example, we had NHIS data for 2024, 2023, and 2022 together and wanted to see how prevalence has changed over time, we will have a year variable, which we will then supply as the time variable. And then here we can choose to analyze the entire data set or a subset of a data set. In this case, we want to analyze the whole data set. So having gone through that, let's select our outcome variables. So we'll click on outcome. I will select the variables of interest here, which includes things like, let's type current to filter all of them. So we have 5 variables that start with current in that data set that was shared. So we'll just select all of them and click on done selecting. So the assignment only says overall estimate. So we don't have to calculate stratified estimate. We will do this tomorrow. That will be the challenge for tomorrow. Today we're just interested in a gentle introduction to what weighted analysis involve. And we want to analyze this data set for the whole population. So we now click on estimate. If you want to change whether you wish the results be displayed as confidence intervals or as standard errors, you would click under preferences, and that's where you get the option to do that. And so here we have our results from the weighted analysis. The prevalence of current cigarette smoking is 9.9%, for current e-cigarette is 7%, and so on. You can also look at the plots, the visualization of the data, and then we also see the text. The platform writes out the results for you. But bottom line here is we've calculated our estimate, overall prevalence estimate. Overall means the prevalence in the entire population. So here we're not yet breaking it down by age or sex, it's just overall. Now, the second part of the challenge says that you should repeat this analysis with unweighted analysis. Remember that right now it is weighted. If you look at the metadata here, the analysis shows that weighting is true, right? So we've accounted for the weighted design. Now, what if we did not want to account for the weighted design and wanted to just compare the result of unweighted with this weighted? Then we can go back and switch the analysis mode from weighted to unweighted. So we'll come to this icon here, click on it, and this toggle that says apply weighting, we will switch it off. So that means that we do not want to apply weighting. So we will click this and we will then save. And as you can see, the analysis mode has switched from weighted to unweighted. Now let's go back and repeat the exact same analysis that we did. Let's go to the analysis history to figure out the analysis we just did. And a minute ago, we calculated overall prevalence that were weighted. So we're going to come to action, view details, and under actions here, we will click on rerun. And now the dataset info you can see here is unweighted. So let's go ahead and click on estimate. So here we have our results for the unweighted analysis. Right off the bat, I can see here that my cigarette smoking is now in double digits. It was in single digits before. So the task for today is for you to compare the results of your unweighted with the weighted. So you can see the impact that weighting has on the validity and the reliability of prevalence estimates. Now let's go to the second part of the challenge. So we are done with task 1, we are done with task 2. The third one says preview your data sets and view the weight column. Why are the weight values different? Let's go to our data set and let's preview it. Let me close this and let's go to the preview of our data sets. All right, let's filter columns to the weight variable, WTFA. This is what we want to preview. So this is the weight variable here. So you are asked to reflect on why the weight variables the values are different across different individuals. And so I look forward to reading your reflections on why that might be different. For you to understand that, you might have to read the methodology report of NHIS and learn a little bit about oversampling and why or how that could affect the weights for individuals in the study. All right, so that's the question. If you have any questions from attempting the challenge, please post them and I'll be happy to respond to you. Thank you very much.